Hello and welcome to season 3, episode 17 of The Dive. I am Kobe, joined by Phreak and Azale. How's it going, boys?
Going pretty well. LCS is back. Everything's back to normal.
It's good to be back.
It's great to be back.
It's great.
It's great to be back.
Super duper to be back.
It was a very long week and a half between MSI and getting back to LCS. I'm happy. I'm excited. We got the second best region in the world. Let's go. Nothing will ever change. We'll remain at least top 2 for the rest of League of Legends.
It was a pretty interesting week 1 back. And we had one new kind of feature, the Pro View, which everyone's been talking about. Seems super successful. I super enjoyed it. And we had a lot of uses of, we had the double lift one, zooming in on, placing his feathers. How are you guys feeling about the Pro View so far?
There's 2 things that I think are really cool. So one is obviously just getting the extra sort of perspective on how they play. It's interesting because you'd already watched them play solo queue, when they stream and whatnot. I felt okay, well, there's not that much of a difference, but there actually is, which is kind of cool. So
yeah,
that's just kind of exciting. That if I ever really want to study up on a matchup or whatever, I can actually watch the whole matchup play out. Because one thing you really miss, when you're watching a regular VOD, is okay, well, you look at bot lane once in a while when there's a fight, but you're watching the jungler's path, you're watching the mid laner go ward, but you're not actually watching every single trade, so that here's how you actually play Sivir versus Xayah. Oh, now I know where his wards are. So okay, well, he sees Smithy is top, and they haven't seen Zach in a while. So it's okay, that's really cool. There's a lot of learning tools there. The other part of it is the fan interaction, where there's a screenshot of Bjergsen typing out "Hey fans, enjoy the show."
Hello gamers.
Yeah. Hey fellow gamers. I got to make it about me. So when I used to play Warcraft 3 competitively, I would talk to the observers while playing. Because there's a lot of downtime in War 3. So we'd be doing our build and be like, "Hey guys, hope you have a fun time in this game." And it reminded me of back in 2004 or whatever. Yeah. So I think both those things are really cool.
Yeah, I think the fan interaction stuff is pretty cute. I've heard a lot of players around the studio talking about that too. So I think you're gonna start seeing more and more people be trying to make you want to watch their Pro View, right? By kind of putting in some little tidbits. I mean, there's some funny stuff in all chat, from Rush and Jensen. They're kind of bantering back and forth, and there's the Bjergsen thing. There's been some pretty fun ones.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah, I was gonna say the other thing that you miss is the trash talk.
Heck yeah, let's go.
We don't get to see usually.
Yep. I wanna know, because this is going to happen. I guarantee you. Who is the first player that dies because they're typing? This is going to happen for sure at some point this split.
It's Rush. It's 100% gonna be Rush.
And you can be like, he was typing and the Zach came onto his screen and he hit F a whole bunch and nothing happened.
Do you remember last split in spring where Rush was in the tri-bush on top side? I forget who the victor was. Froggen, actually.
Froggen,
yeah, it was Froggen.
Yeah, he was looking at mid.
Yeah, Rush is standing there, and then they made all these edits afterwards of what he was doing.
Yeah.
Alt-tabbing, YouTubing stuff. Yeah. Looking up how to counter Victor.
Victor counter and stuff. Yeah, that was really funny.
Yep.
I mean, the players already did type some, right? So it's there will be probably some additional typing, especially if people are trying to play to the crowd a bit. It's when you see streamers who are doing no mic, no cam, right? And they just give their reactions in chat. They hit enter and they do a bunch of question marks when someone messes up and then delete it, right? I could see players doing that some, which might be a little bit too far if you're getting distracted by it for a pro game. But one of the things that I thought is really interesting about Pro View is, as an educational tool, everyone is looking at it obviously as an educational tool, also entertainment for fan point of view. What do you guys think about it as an educational tool for pros, right? The discussion that if you're on the worst pro team, there's probably more to learn from watching, pro views of the best team. And kind of where do you guys see that? Is this a disadvantage actually for a team like Team Liquid, or is it not really something you can emulate?
Well, Doublelift has been asking for everyone else to get better and give them a challenge. So I actually think it would be a good thing because competition breeds excellence. And if it does make everyone catch up quicker to Team Liquid, then it will force Team Liquid to innovate and become better. So I think that will be a good cycle when it happens. Like you're talking about, though, I do think it's a super useful tool for not only regular players, but also the pro teams to learn why they're getting beat by Cloud9, TSM, and C9. Everyone's talking about, oh my God, there's such a clear difference. It's the top 3 and then everybody else. And it doesn't just come down to mechanics, right? There are plenty of people on all of the other teams that get up there in solo queue, but there's a big difference here. The solo queue and watching someone stream is so much different than professional games and watching someone's pro view.
Yep. Yeah, quality of play is obviously very different in that case.
So do you think then it's a big difference, as far as learning for another team? Because like I'm not sure, I can watch, if I watch Doublelift play in solo queue, I see his mouse movements, whatever. But if I was a pro team, I could already watch VODs of the pro games, right? I imagine they had access to the replay files, so was my understanding. So you would be able to scroll around the map and still watch lanes and watch a full lane play out. The only difference would be you wouldn't see them pressing the actual buttons and their mouse clicks on the map, right? So for pro point of view, I'm just not sure. Like, is this really like going to be a big learning thing? Because I could still watch, how Licorice plays out every matchup if I'm Dokla or whatever before, but now having his point of view, I mean, I guess it's interesting to see camera movements, it's interesting to see mouse movements, and maybe there's some extra things that you would pick up there, but I still feel like you could see most of like the trading patterns as far as if you're a pro team and have the replays, probably just by watching a regular replay.
Yeah, my experience when I was a Warcraft 3 competitor was, yes, there were first-person VODs a little bit, but that was entertainment that I would watch. Like, I'd watch Moon's replays to be like, oh, okay, here's how many archers he builds, and like, here's how many wisps before he goes tier 2 or whatever. Like, and I'd get strategic specifics, or I would watch an opponent's replay and be like, oh, here's when you build your second burrow. Okay, I can pressure that. Like, and yeah, you'd look for strategic layer things, and then execution, right? Like, watching a replay doesn't make you micro better, generally speaking. I mean, like, there can't, oh, I didn't think of that, oh, okay, cool, but like, by far, yeah, I think replays are kind of the cleaner way of getting that.
Yeah, there have been small things that people have been picking up on. Like, one thing we used to always talk about was how close some of the pros keep their mouse clicks to their character, so you can turn quicker and you have quicker reactions. Or there was a big thing about Faker, how much he was spamming
all the F keys.
The F keys, and LS got his justification.
His vindication, yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, there are some little things like that may be like, oh, I can play the game this way, or I can do some little adjustment. Something like, oh, if you're on higher ground firing my skill shot, oh, look at this player, he adjusts for it.
Yeah.
And you can actually see the click where he's adjusting for it. Maybe some small things like that, but I guess, yeah, if they already had access to the full replays where you can go around the map yourself anyways, then that's a big chunk of it.
It definitely is. And for me, the thing that like I find most interesting and most educational from watching the point of view is kind of like what information they have and what they're doing with that. I think is kind of really fun to see, like, where, like, as you're talking about with Faker moving around the F keys and stuff, like watching top laners and trying to see, okay, what is their read on where jungler is and how they're playing based on that, how they're actually like, watching team fights if they're considering TPing into and kind of like you get some extra insight into what they were thinking during different moments. And it's also really fun. I know I've seen Loco Doco on Twitter, kind of tweeting out these little pictures of essentially like, oh, this is what happened when this guy did this. It didn't look like the skill shot was going to hit him on his screen. That's why he didn't flash. Or, oh, this guy's mouse was in the wrong position when he used his summer or whatever. Like, those kind of little insights are definitely really cool, and you don't get those from replays. So it's definitely a lot of fun. I mean, the next layer would be getting the comms from teams, but that's probably probably way too much.
I think that's almost definitely not happening.
But that would be really fun.
Yeah, that would be interesting, right? But I think it
almost definitely.
Great. Yeah, bad phrasing. It's like my job or something. There were two really specifics I wanted to jump into really quickly. One was like the high APM thing, like pressing all your F keys, whatever. I actually have them bound to 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's easier for me because even. But I'm going to say, I don't think it's actually that important. If you're on a pro team with voice comms, like it's like people playing StarCraft or Warcraft or whatever. It's like, yeah, you can click your mouse 500 times a second or a minute or whatever. It doesn't actually do anything. Like, you're just wasting actions. And it's like, Khan can tell you like what the other top laner is doing, or like your jungler can track their jungler, or you can use a ward, whatever. Like, watching your Zac kill Raptors is not actually helping you do almost anything. I feel like in a lot of cases it's wasteful.
Okay, so there are cases where it's wasteful, but there are like it is useful. Like, always, like, having more information.
Yes.
So for me personally, as a jungler.
Yeah.
So maybe not.
Right. So
for different roles, it'll be different. But for me as a jungler, it is way faster for me to look at the matchups than to be like, yo, blah blah blah. Is it a great time to gank? What is he doing now? What I mean, I'll communicate. Hey, what summoners does he have? At the same time, I'll look at it. See the health bars, see what they're trading. that type of stuff.
Yep. But I think there's basically I'm I'm kind of like nitpicking because I think there's going to be like this sort of culture of like, oh, why don't you have 500 APM like Faker? He's better than you. Like, why aren't you panning around the map all the time? Like, I see that coming, and so much of that is going to be useless. Like, yes, of course, there's a level of information you want to gain, but like if you watch that clip of Faker's VOD, like that is not needed for actually any. Not even Faker needs that, right? Like there is a certain degree of over, I don't know, hyperness. Like I don't know what the right word for it is, but like. There is such a thing as too much APM where it's like you don't need to do this. This is actually not helpful.
Yeah.
And
at a certain level, like it's probably too much.
Yeah.
That you're not even taking it in. It's probably detrimental.
It's like people spamming the tab key. It's like no, to hold it down and read the items.
But exactly. But the basic layer, like the APM thing, I completely agree with. I don't think you need inflated APM.
Yeah.
But the ability to quickly check information,
totally agree.
It is good, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's a pretty funny argument, and most of them usually are when there's something real on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically somewhere in the middle where it's like it's useful as long as you are actually digesting the information, right? You know, me just going like this on my F keys isn't actually making me better. You have to be able to digest the information quickly and also not mess up your lane at the same time, right? As a jungler, I use F keys a lot.
Yeah.
When I'm laning, I find it harder because if I'm spending too much time going around and I get hit by a skill shot or I'm missing CS, it becomes not worth it, right?
Yep.
And like I played a ton of StarCraft and lived with StarCraft pros, and it's such a huge thing in StarCraft because APM became this stat that everyone just decided, yep, that's like this skill stat. That tells you how good you are, right? If you have sick APM, you're sick. So there'll be people in like gold and silver and whatever who have like 200 or 300 APM, but they're literally just mashing. They have like almost zero effective APM, right?
Yep.
And that is essentially like what the same kind of thing is here in League, right? It's essentially like a APM versus effective APM, right? If you were actually moving around the map and hitting F keys and understanding the matchups and still not missing CS and still doing that things, then those are all great. But my favorite example from StarCraft of that was always this Protoss player called Elfie, who had like 70 or 60 APM, sometimes even lower as his average for pro games, and he won multiple tournaments with like ridiculously low APM, right? But he only like every movement was something that was like a specific action. It was no mashing. It was no like, the F keys often in StarCraft were used to just tap through your bases and check on things, which is useful, but people would also just be mashing it, right?
Of
and
course.
people would be sitting there at like 800 APM, like at the start of the game, just like
every StarCraft VOD ever starts with someone drag clicking all their SCVs just to click them.
Yeah.
It's like, cool. Good job, dude.
Yeah. So it's definitely interesting. And it is fun to get those kind of insights on how people play. And I think that especially, as Pro View, is opening up in more and more regions and people are getting more and more of those types of VODs, it'll be interesting to see like if there is really differences in how people kind of do that stuff in different regions. And that's kind of what I'm excited for.
Well, speaking of different regions, people also been talking quite a lot about imports, imports rules, the differences in import rules across regions, and also how effectively they've been used. And this is something you've talked about before, Azale, where, across the world, there were a lot of older Korean players that were imported specifically that didn't really retain their perceived value, I guess, across the new seasons. What are your thoughts on the kind of recent discussion?
So I mean, I think the TLDR, like I just quickly zoomed through it before we came here. The TLDR, I think, is essentially just talking about the fact that like you can get residency a lot faster in NA than in some of the other regions. That comes down to immigration law, right? So that's not really something I'm gonna like comment on a lot because I don't really have a strong opinion on it, other than like if that's the law. Maybe there is an argument for like, okay, well, even if it's the law, then Riot should just make it standardized across all regions and stuff. But I don't really know like the intricacies of that. I'm more interested in talking about, like as far as the long-term impacts. Like I think the quote from Sven was essentially like, even if NA wins Worlds, it won't be the best region because it'll be a team that's just like full of imports, right? Because of the residency rule. And I think it's the idea of like, is that actually something that is making your region stronger, or is it hurting you long term? And I think that's what is an interesting conversation for me. The idea that, okay, Team Liquid is already sitting on, essentially 3 non-American North American players. Jensen is going to become a resident pretty soon. Then they could have another import, and then you could essentially have the 4 import 1 NA team, right?
Yeah.
And
if they want Santorin for some reason, like,
yeah,
I mean, they already have Smithy, but like,
or there
are other players in other
or
roles.
whoever, right? You know what I mean? Like that's what people are talking about. Then that could be a huge advantage. And I think it short term it really is an advantage. And I think if your talent pool is improving by playing against these higher level players, then that is good. But if it comes at the expense of programs like like the academy is not being focused on anymore, if collegiate and all these things are not being worked on, if scouting grounds becomes kind of defunct because of it, then I do think it actually hurts your region, because you're not having the same level of competition for all these players coming up, and then it just becomes a situation of who can get the most resident imports, which is not exciting to me. So and that's something that was a bit of a challenge that StarCraft faced, where for WSG, for StarCraft, it was essentially came to a situation where they unregion locked and everything was allowed imports, and then the representatives for literally every region of the world were just Koreans qualifying from the Korean server on every region, and I don't want that in League. I think it's nice to be able to have players having that aspiration of going pro from every region, not just from whatever is the most dominant.
And I think so. Just sort of playing it out, right? I think there are certain players that even if their career started somewhere else, like Bjergsen, first played with Copenhagen Wolves and then came over to North America. I think there are players like Bjergsen where even though like his origins are Danish, like he feels like, and of course he is a resident, like he feels like an NA player at this point to me. Like he's just one of ours now. Because he spent so long here, because his where his roots are, where his life is. Like he goes back to Denmark to see his family sometimes, but like he doesn't spend like the entire off season back in Denmark. Like this dude is essentially American now, and that's just how that works, right? Like he's like in my mind, like he's an NA player straight up, and not just because of residency. Like I just think he's an NA player, and Jensen is kind of in a similar boat where like his first pro start was on Cloud 9, right? Like he's sort of becoming an NA player, and that's sort of like who he is. So to a certain degree, like I just think that's just how I view it. And you may not agree as fans or analysts or anyone watching, but that's kind of how I see that kind of movement. And it's different when you've had 3 or 4 years. Like Core JJ is going to take a long time before I think he's an NA player. Like I think he's definitely an import right now. And even if he is through the in-regional movement policy, like becomes a permanent resident, that's probably still going to be a bit slow for me to think like, just because so much of his career was achieved through Korea, right? He won Worlds with Samsung. So until he wins Worlds twice with North America, he doesn't. But, if you do that, then, welcome home. But, and I'm saying it kind of as a joke, obviously, but sort of, based on their career, I think there's like a different view of who they are as players and like sort of like the internal feeling, regardless of the actual rules around it, of sort of like where they're from in a sense.
Yeah. And you're getting into a much more deep, like, political and philosophical discussion of immigration and what does it really mean to be
American? Yeah, of course.
Right? Which is has changed over the years, and it has been a long-term discussion. I think that I really like Azel's topic that I was bringing up about how I do think that it is a positive thing as long as it doesn't come at the cost of building up the normal region, right? Because different regions and different servers deal with their own issues, right? North America, we have one of the smaller servers overall, just as far as server population. So it's going to be more difficult just by the numbers to compete. Plus, our population is spread out over a very large geographical area. So that lends to the high ping or whatever. There's no technical solution for these servers where to place them to have really good low ping. Like what you want for the best possible scenario is super dense population, in one area. So you can have a lot of people that are interested in ranked and they're all in the same area. Like that is the ideal state. And that's an advantage inherent to some servers, right? And so like, can your region compete with that? Okay, so you have some disadvantages, so you have some other advantages, and as long as they aren't at the detriment of some other areas, then I think that's just going to be another one along the list, right? There are big differences.
Sure. Two things I wanted to bring up. So one is like to go back to what I said earlier, like I sort of want to clarify, like in terms of like calling you American versus being like an NA player, because
I'm sure a lot of EU watchers are like, nope, he's European.
Well, I just mean like because you sort of bring up like all these like political examples. Is like I'm not trying to like say you're not American if you live in America, consider yourself American, right? Like I'm not trying to like gatekeep literally being American.
Yeah.
Like I want to be very clear on that because that's not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
As far as like being like considering an NA player, I think like is its own discussion. Want to get that out of the way. Okay. Just that was important to me. The other one is you talk about ping. One thing just to bring it up for discussion briefly is like China's also a very, very large landmass, right? Mm-hmm. And all those players are also like spread across like a very large country as well. And a lot of the Chinese pros play Korean solo queue. Yeah. So it's always a counterpoint I like to bring up. Not that high ping is good, obviously, but that like IG1 Worlds with their players playing in China or on the Korean server solo queue, and that like it's not just like we can't win Worlds because our ping is 70. Like I just sort of that piece of information I just wanted to like throw out there.
I do agree, but they also do have like what 20x the server.
Oh, of course, they have a million.
Even though they are a large landmass, they have higher density.
Sure.
League players.
Yeah, I mean they have way more league players. I mean that's just fact.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also at a higher density for all their servers, right?
Okay.
So they have lots of other servers. Mm-hmm. Even with them being spread out, right? They still have a higher density.
Oh yeah. I mean, as far as player base, it's not close.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And their ping to the Korean server is what was it? I think it was like 40 for most of wherever the pros were playing from. So it was also
that's actually quite
less.
good.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
Yeah. The only other thing I kind of wanted to touch on with that is I do think, along the lines of as long as it's not at the expense of developing talent is because I do think if teams stop focusing on developing, regional talent, you maybe improve more short term as far as international results, but you are going to hit this bump in the road where, okay, now you have all these imports who are residents and they're really important, but they're actually like aging out or not good anymore, essentially, but you're like stuck with them. Because you haven't actually like developed any new talent to replace these people, right? If in 5 or 10 years every team has 4 imports, but like you don't have another import slot and there's no academy team and you didn't scout anyone out of collegiate and no one cares about that anymore, then you're actually stuck with, Jensen, who's now hasn't played league in the last 4 years, but he's still pro. You know what I mean? Like this kind of situation where there's not actually people coming in to replace those who are not as good anymore.
Yeah. Basically the import slot rule is kind of keeping that in check.
Yeah.
Yep. Or supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. All right, well, patch 9.11 will be coming out in Pro this week for NA. What are your big takeaways? You're doing the Phreak show later today. Give us a preview.
Well, I got one thing wrong, which is I didn't expect to see much Tahm Kench. Because across 9.10, I was looking at stats, and it was like only Golden Guardians played it, and I think like 1 team or 0 teams in the LPL played it. So I was like, okay, Tahm Kench is gone. And then LCK played last night, and it was picked in game 1 of one of the series, and it was picked in game 1 and banned the other 2 of the other series. So it's like, okay, well, at least 2 teams in Korea actually really care about Tahm Kench. So I thought he was gone. Maybe he's not. Galio's on the way out. 9.11 dropped Galio. It lowered Akali, which didn't mean too much.
I mean, just pick out your favorite thing that you're excited about. I don't think we need
the full rundown.
I have one that I'm very excited about.
I'm generally excited about like the 4 big nerfs, basically. Jace, Akali, Galio all dropping off. I always enjoy higher variation champ select, so we've seen this meta for a long time. It was all of MSI. Get them out of there, see some new stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that the nerfs for all 4 of those they're substantial enough to actually drop them? How far, on the ranking? Are they out of play, or are they literally just past the ban phase now, past the first pick, still usable?
I feel like all these changes were pretty small. Like Tahm Kench is actually win rate up for solo queue. That solo queue and pro, Tahm Kench are not the same champion, to be fair, but like Akali, Jace, and Galio were all moderate. It was like 1.52% win rate, which should be enough to make a big difference in pro. But like we just saw like a bunch of Tahm Kench play recently, and like Akali was getting banned a bunch still in Korea as well. So I'm not convinced they're gone, but it should make people take a second look. And I think in general, these are kinds of champions where the pick rate will go down over time. That people will realize that there are better replacements now, and that day 1 of the patch, you'll still see them probably above 50% presence, and it will decay.
Yeah. I mean, and there's nothing for like Rise, right? Which is a very professional play oriented champion. So I think that Rise is going to be even more contested as one of those bans or early picks. But to me, Azael, guess what I'm looking at?
Zach.
Big surprise. It's jungler. It's not Zach.
Gragas.
I really don't care about Zach at all. It's Gragas. Because Gragas is another one of those champions that the kit is really, really strong for professional play. Body Slam Flash will always and has always been just such an amazing tool because you get so little time to react to it. The ultimate has so many uses and has a very high degree of difficulty of executing. So when they buff base stats like this, I'm like, Gragas is coming back for sure, right?
Yeah.
I know that pro players, these guys have put in years on this champion because it's been in the meta for so long during different patches that they see flat number buffs like this, and they're like, hell yeah, time to get back on the Gragas chain. Plus, the thing I talked about last episode with the AP jungle item buff could very well be used by Gragas also. You can go either send a Hulk or the AP item. I think that 9 times out of 10, the AP item is always better for Gragas professional play or solo queue regardless. So I think that those two are gonna combine to give us some more variation in the jungle, which I am also excited about because the early game had become kind of boring to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's a Rek'Sai. Oh yeah, we're gonna get another Jarv. Well, now we get more threatening APs. Yeah, and I thought last patch we were gonna see the Elise. I'm still holding on to that, even though we didn't see it. I want to see Elise. I hold to my beliefs, Phreak.
I believe you. I think we'll see.
I still think Elise is going to start to show up sometime.
So
I'm good enough.
I read. I was reading an interview from Contracts, and he's talking about Elise actually. And so he said he's talking about AP junglers in general, basically, and the idea that like Elise being one of them. He thinks Elise is pretty good, but has the same problem that he basically said Talia did, where he thinks that it's dependent upon your teammates' picks. So basically the idea that like you need a Renekton or a Jace on your team for Elise to become a good pick is what he was saying. Like the idea that we all know how good of a 2v2 you have, and 2v1 diving with resetting the aggro is so strong. So that was interesting to me. And he also said he felt the same way about Talia, where essentially you need CC champions on your team to like set up Talia for a guaranteed fling. So that was kind of interesting, but I still do think Elise can work, and we do see a smattering of it here and there.
Well, and she's not a all-purpose jungler, right? Yeah. Elise is an early game jungler. Yeah. Elise is a smash these lanes, snowball these people ahead, and win the game early jungler. And I think that she is capable of doing that right now and is good for that use. It's just is there a team that wants to do that? Gragas, to me, is a much more all-purpose jungler where I'm like, all right, well, he's definitely back in.
Totally agree. On the Elise point, if she's not actually overpowered, it means you have to be stratting for it, which just means by default, she can't be high presence unless you're in a league where all the teams like, no, early game is a strategy. And everyone's like, yep, I agree, early game is strategy. It's like, okay, well, now Elise is the hot commodity.
I'm actually kind of interested about the Janna changes. I was looking at this. So I don't actually know if it's really going to make, like, it seems like probably your win rate's going to go down, but maybe this is something where skilled Janna players can actually differentiate each other's more. So essentially what the change is that every time you slow or knock back an enemy champion, your shield is reducing cooldown by 20%. So the shield is also buffed and went down in just like cooldown at rank 1. It's 2 seconds longer cooldown at the highest rank. W cooldown also now scales so that it does a little bit less damage. It's less about like W max poke. But the idea that if you're actually in the mix in a fight and positioning well and playing well in John, and you're constantly hitting Ws and constantly hitting Qs, your shield is going to be a really short cooldown. I think that anytime that there's a ton of engaged champs that are coming into the game and champs that are like, champs like Aurelia and you mentioned like Rek'Sai and J4 and all these sorts of champions, Janna can be really strong. We haven't really seen it in pro ever since like Ardent Sensor was super popular. But it would at least be a pick that I think is worth considering, like especially with Aatrox and all these champions. Janna can be so effective. And if this can actually be played at a really high level where you're weaving in those constant slows and your Qs, and I don't know if there's like if Spooky Ghosts and stuff would count because it says like and it says ability. So I don't know if those count as abilities or if those count as items.
I would guess it's probably her spell zone.
Yeah, it has to be ability.
But either way, you'd get a lot of shielding. Could be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think the shielding buff is going to be definitely relevant, especially with Sivir and Jinx and some late game crit marks
You have a lot of
being very popular again.
Yep. Yeah. Her skill Q did go up about 1%. Or a bit under that. So even just like people trying it day one were pretty effective on the champion. Play rate spiked a bit as well. So yeah, I mean, it's getting some pickup. I don't know if it's getting pickup in Challenger. I didn't really look, but yeah, with Gally losing some all-in damage, that helps. Xayah Rakan, though, can probably still one-shot Janna. I feel like I'm not sure if it's very easy as Janna to reflex Q and stop Rakan. I feel
it's
like
hard to reflex Q. I think if she's doing like an RW, but I think you should be able to R it.
Yeah,
that is like instant, right? Like you should be able to use your R and you just do the R for one tap and run away.
Yeah,
that is like pretty reliable, I think, against Rakan. I think you have to be anticipating the engage if they're going to RW. Like you have to think they're going to be coming and have already pressed your Q and then just be doing the release.
Yep. So yeah, if she can properly stuff all ins, then she's suddenly good against tank supports, can survive tank supports. Or at least engage supports and not get one shot. But that you have to kind of survive that meta, right? Like, yes, you're good alongside Xayahs and Sivers, but you have to be able to survive Xayah and her supports. So that's what it comes down to. But and yeah, then it requires a sea change of, okay, well, now we have to be able to play around a squishy support who can't ward for herself because she'll get one shot by the jungler. Right, you're not Braum where you can walk away from the Elise without dying. So okay, and you have to like go through that entire chain of like learning. I think it's totally viable champion. I think like in a world where teams have infinite time to practice, we're going to see Janna, this weekend. We're not in that world, so it's at what point does a team put in the time to practice champs like this?
Yeah. Fair enough. I think we should get onto the LCS then. And starting at the very top, we had Cloud9 with a 2-0 weekend, Golden Guardians, and Optic.
Yeah.
All looking quite strong.
Optic beat 100 Thieves and Clutch, which were I think actually the literal bottom two from last split. I think we're 10th and 9th. So it is, if literally nothing changed and you're like, it's week 10 of the LCS and they 2-0'd over Clutch and over Clutch and Thieves, you're like, okay. Right? Like that's actually the first read. So the first thing I'm gonna do is like burst the bubble of like, well, of course they did. But
they're undefeated.
But they are undefeated. They had the easiest possible strength of schedule and took care of business. But I like their players a lot. Like Arrow. Oh, and I mean that in terms of I think they're actually quite good, right? Yeah. Crown is obviously great. Meteos is great. I think Arrow seems to be getting back toward form. I don't think he's back to MVP Phoenix 1 Arrow. But I was pretty pleased with him so far this weekend. So I think there is enough there for this to be a solid team. I don't think that they're going to remain in first or anything, but they seem decent.
I think the coolest thing about Optics 2-0, yes, strength of schedule aside, was that it seemed that they had a bit of a different play style, a bit of a different strategy, right? It was less about Dokla being the crazy man in the side lane who's doing the split push.
Crazy man.
And now it was back-to-back games where it was Crown, right? Who was dedicated, to that side lane on the TF. I think he played very well in TF. It was exciting to see that brought out. But even on the Vladimir, I believe it was Vladimir, he was, again, out to those side lanes, committing to the split push. And, they were opting into, okay, you're going for Baron or Elder? Well, great. We're just going to take your base. And both their games ended in that fashion. And I think it's really fun for a team to kind of have this take on it where they're willing to play this kind of crazy style and essentially skill check you at that style, right? Because if you're going to do this stuff every week and you're putting yourself in these base race type crazy scenarios or split push scenarios, you're going to have so much more experience in that than your opponents. And if you're not, like, no one is putting Optic at the top of the league, right? We were all talking about them as one of the teams is going to be at the bottom. So, I think it's interesting to have a different strategy. And I think it makes sense to put resources into Crown in a side lane because Meteos is naturally playing a lot more around Crown. And Crown has been, I think, their big star.
Yeah. I do think Meteos also has been really good.
He was great.
And it really does seem like he is in a good place on Optic. So I'm happy that they've been able to settle on their jungler situation as well. Does seem to be working out for them to have some stability. I don't know what the practice or anything is still like.
Yeah, I mean, Meteos had 2 deaths the whole weekend, and one of them was an execute to the turret as they were winning the game, which was, to me, him just trolling around, right? That's pretty insane. And I do think it, at the very least, though it is an easy strength of schedule, you were not disappointed as an Optic fan from this weekend, right? And we'll see how they do going forward. Golden Guardians, I think, this is the best start they've had in their org's history. 2-0. They started even last split where they did make the playoffs and I guess finished 5th, 6th or whatever.
Yeah.
They were 1 game away from semis though, and they started 0-4. So it's nice to see them out to a good start again. And again, something that was really exciting for me watching Golden Guardians was it wasn't just Froggen having the Anivia game, it was Froggen on Aurelia, which is a pick that neither him nor Hanser played in spring. They actually played it effectively, playing, multiple flex picks, moving their leads around and being proactive. Like they showed 2 very different styles in game 1 and game 2, which I think was a lot of fun. And I think they looked really clean as a team, especially in the Aurelia game, their first game.
Yeah, I think in week 1, you have to rely so heavily on watching the gameplay and the eye test, people call it, rather than, this team went 2-0, that team went 0-2 or whatever, because, of course, sample size is very low and the opponents mean a lot. That was one of the most promising things.
Pleasing to the eyes.
For Golden Guardians was the way in which they won. People in the second game versus FlyQuest were like, oh my goodness, I want more kills, I want more action. But
that's their comp.
That was not only was that Golden Guardians playing the long range Anivia, objective focus game, but it was them soundly defeating one of their previous playoff opponents. And this is one of their hotly contested, probably going to be competing for similar spots again in summer. So I thought that was an extremely strong win from them. And off the back of their Echo Fox win as well, where they went with the more aggressive map movements, I think, does seem like the Golden Guardians have been on a steady rise, which is a pretty good story. Coming into summer, they have had aspirations towards qualifying for Worlds. And they're definitely at least headed in that direction because people want it to be more than just the 3-team race of Cloud9, Team Liquid, and TSM. And it being like this foregone conclusion, okay, we're going to have those 3 again. So I'm glad that it could be more exciting than just that.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it has to be teams stepping up to that level. I don't want it to be a race because Team Liquid keeps throwing games and they end up being a 10-8 team. I want to see them, remain on form, right? So yeah, hey, Golden Guardians, right, beating FlyQuest, beating Fox. Okay, that just via that puts you maybe you're number 4 right now because that's where FlyQuest was before. And yeah, if they're on the way up, if they're actually going to play super sharp, I mean they're going to get to face Cloud9 on Sunday. That's going to be an important matchup. They'll probably beat Clutch. If Clutch beats them, that's impressive by Clutch. But okay, that C9 match at 3:00 on Sunday, that's going to be a big deal. And I'm very curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really is the question on everyone's mind. Can they challenge someone in that big 3? Cloud9 had a great start in the first weekend as well. So, I mean, if they were able to take down Cloud9, that does give some hope to some of these other teams outside of that top 3, that it's not just, a kind of predestined that these teams are going to be making Worlds. So I think that's going to be really, really exciting for them.
Yeah, speaking of Cloud9, I feel like they were the only one of the top 3 teams that really picked up where they left off in spring. Because Team Liquid came out of the gates and they smashed TSM and were like, oh my God, they're still in MSI form.
They kept telling us they weren't good anymore, but no,
Well, yeah, they were like, okay, so they haven't practiced, and we're like, all right, that means they're gonna lose, right? Well, there was very big variation in their play. Meanwhile, so Cloud9 though, because that's what we're focusing on here.
Yeah.
They picked up right where they left off. I felt like they played a very, very similar style. The games look very similar. Licorice was a beast. Svenskeren especially, I feel like has been terrorizing. Even at the end of spring last year, people were still not quite giving him as much credit. I mean, the public have been very, very swingy up and down on Svenskeren.
Yeah.
They're either flaming him out of his mind from his TSM times, whenever he makes mistakes. He's been in the scene for such a long time. There's a lot of history with this player.
Yeah.
But he also dominated so many games so heavily that I feel like people were kind of lagging behind giving him enough credit for spring, and coming out in summer extremely strong. Plus, as I said, Licorice, I think this team definitely is going to be on a similar course. And their week 1 did give me confidence. I was like, okay, they're definitely going to be at the top of the table again. I still think that TSM and Team Liquid will make their way there, but they haven't started there, right?
Yeah. It's kind of nice then because they're not going to play C9 for a little while there. C9's week 2 is Echo Fox to headline the weekend, and then Golden Guardians at the end of Sunday, as we talked about a second ago. Yeah, I think those are decent matches, right? Because Echo Fox just beat TL. Okay, it was somewhat TL throwing, but it was also Solo stepping up, and I've been impressed by Solo for the last year or so. I think now he's probably the best player on his team. I know I'm moving to Echo Fox a bit, but it makes it. I like C9's week 2 schedule. You play 2 other teams that are looking pretty good right now, including the undefeated Golden Guardians. So, okay, that's a fun one to watch. That goes forward pretty well.
I feel like Cloud9 games are always fun to watch because even like their first game, they're losing at points, right? But they're always looking for the flank. They're always looking for that fight. You know that it's never going to be one of the stall out, slowly lose objectives until the other team makes a mistake.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Licorice got solo killed, twice? Yeah. 3 times in the first one? Twice
by Viper, right?
But then he was moving around the map everywhere, finding kills. He was great in team fights. Yeah. The only concerning thing I would say for me, was maybe, okay, that was a little bit sloppy in the first game, but the second game, everyone kind of forgets how badly their bottom lane got slammed. They were playing the Sonateric.
They were playing versus Yumi, weren't they?
No,
that was the CLG
game.
Never mind. That was
this is they were playing against, I don't know, Varus something. I can't remember.
Oh yeah. They did get slammed.
They got absolutely blasted. It was because the top side of the map was doing so well. It didn't feel like they were ever losing because both their solo lanes are winning. Spencer's doing great. You're like, oh man, they're slamming this game. And you look at the goal that's dead. Even like, what's happening? You look down bot lane. It's like, oh my god. They're down. They're down like 50 plus CS. Had lost their entire turret by
check
10
the
minutes.
pro view on that one. Yeah. Check the tapes.
There was some bad things happening. It felt like in the bot lane, which was I was a little bit surprised by because their bottom lane's performance in game 1 was so great, where it was like the opposite. And maybe it is just a thing because I have been hearing a lot of pros talking about how much they value Varus right now, and they think Varus is insane.
Yeah.
And Sneaky played Varus day 1, was up like 50 CS. They played Sonateric, which it's supposed to lose, but it's not supposed to lose that much. And it was against Varus as well.
Yeah, in that game, Cody-san single-handedly made the game tied in gold. He made up for all the leads that every other player on C9 had, and then team fighting was better for C9, so they did it in mid-game.
Yeah, we were the ones casting that one. That was
was Zaya, actually.
It was. It was very much a split map, right? C9's controlling the top side. Sven was on the top side, and then the enemy jungler was on the bottom side, and it was very much a tale of 2 carries until the team fights came around, right?
Yeah.
And
then Akali solo kills Zion. It's like, okay, it's over.
Yeah, they were just completely split team fights.
Yeah. Yeah, or Silas or whoever it was. But either way, Ninsky solo kills Cody-san. Like, okay, game's over. Yeah. They've done it. Good job.
But and we've got, I guess, like next, going down the line, Echo Fox is another team that I kind of want to touch on.
Actually, can I quickly interject?
Sure.
Reignover on C9 is one of the new changes as well. And I have not talked to him directly about this, but the last 2 people I've heard talk about Reignover had nothing but absurdly good things to say about his mindset about the game. I feel like C9 are collecting high-tier coaches, like their Pokemon trainers, just like they're just grabbing them all, like because Reaper's already really great, but this is like their third now high-profile coach who's really smart about the game. So, I think this is like, okay, well, like, does this like help you put C9 as number 1 maybe, or like, right, just like getting better at strategy and tactics and whatnot, and if Svenskeren has Svenskeren micro and Reignover brain, is he just like the best jungler ever, right? Like. Because Reignover, like that, he was always like the pathing jungler. Where it's like, oh, his mechanics aren't great, but like he's always right place, right time. You Exodia that. Is he just the best now?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's hard to know what he's offering that that Reaper wasn't, or that Svenskeren didn't know, or whatever. Sure. So for me, I kind of have to see that play out more. And yeah, if Svenskeren has his best ever season, then great. Reaper, like with Reaper and with Reignover coming in, then you say, okay, well maybe that is a big part of that. But for me, it kind of remains to be seen, because that was certainly, I think, Reignover's reputation when he was at his best. But he did have a couple of years in a row, of not really anything very good past the first gank, it felt like. So we'll see. But I do think it's a great pickup for C9, because people do talk very highly about Reignover, even when he wasn't doing well and had been doing poorly for a long time. Other pros still had a lot of respect for him and his opinions.
Yeah, I think the coaching staff pickups are extremely limited, extremely difficult to come by right now. So it is super high value. but our judgment of the value is mostly like, hey, look at all of his team are tweeting out all these positive things about him. Hey, it must be super smart, super good, right?
Yep, great.
It's so hard because there's no team house view or whatever. Maybe the
Bring
teams
back
will,
the curse days.
Yeah, maybe the
like
teams will
Big
come out,
Brother or whatever that show was.
Yep, that's the one.
get to see exactly what's going on. But I do think it's a super interesting topic because I know in the off season, I was talking to so many of the team's staff, and they were just asking for recommendations for me from like random people of who I would suggest for not only coaching staff, but also analysts. And I was like, I don't know. It's hard. Like, go check Reddit or something. Like, it's so difficult to find anyone because there's very few people with that experience and very few people that will also command respect. Professional players, ex-professional players like Reignover are definitely cases for that. And if you can transition a player like that into a coaching role where they can explain themselves well, they have good empathy, and they can work with people very well, like that is a combination of skills that to me is insanely valuable. Yeah. Even more so than a lot of the player pickups because the staffing pool is so limited.
Cool. Yeah. All right. As you wanted to talk about Echo Fox, Azael.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
I mean, we can go on Echo Fox a little bit. Yeah, they did have the 1-in-1 week. They lost to Golden Guardians, who did play really well, but they got pretty blasted by Golden Guardians. That was the Aurelia game that Frogman was playing, and that one wasn't very close. The Team Liquid win is going to make people, I think, feel very good. But again, it's harder to know how indicative that is going to be of their success going forward because Liquid got way ahead in the early game, and then it felt like really misexecuted in the mid-game team fights. And it was, that is a game that if that was, in spring, you were expecting that they win like 10 times out of 10 because Liquid had done that so many times where once they are in a good position, they take the one team fight, they always win that team fight, they take the Baron, the game ends, right? And this was that aberration. And I do think that Solo deserves a lot of credit for at least even creating a scenario in which they could win a team fight because he was winning 1v2s or at least getting trade kills in a 1v3 scenario. Even, this was Impact with the counter pick, coming off of a fantastic MSI, and Solo, beasted. Solo was so good this game. He did almost 50% of his team's damage. I remember seeing the stats. So he was having an incredible game. But their bottom lane got trashed in both the games, if I'm recalling correctly, or at least no, that's not fair. The Sivir game, the first game was more close, I guess. But they were massively ahead against, or rather behind against, Doublelift and Core JJ in this game. And Solo needed to buy them a lot of time to kind of come back into it because it really was, Solo with the lead, but Doublelift was a couple thousand gold ahead of his opponent. And TL was in a great spot, to win some of these fights, but really had some poor engages. There was a team fight in the mid game where it was like Lost is down thousands of gold and Jensen is ult flashing as a collie onto him. Doublelift's like running through the whole team trying to auto attack him. Like this was like, I'm like, what am I watching? Like does not look like a Team Liquid game. And even Core JJ, he wasn't. It didn't feel like he could find a single engage over Khan that entire game.
Yeah. So to me, that game was what I was expecting for a Team Liquid that's coming off of MSI and saying they all want to take breaks and deserve breaks because they've been grinding for so long. I was like, okay, that was more what I expected because it was even up in the air. If they were going to start practicing or whatever. That to me, I was like, okay, that was more of like you're saying, a lot of mistakes that came through. To me, still though, Echo Fox, them using their new players was a big deal coming out in summer, using Lost. And Yasui towards the mid lane. I had heard some very good things about their scrims coming in, and they talked about it in a couple of their interviews afterwards, how after the first loss, they were like, oh, okay, we just need to try and play like we were playing in scrims and getting these new guys comfortable on the stage and getting the team comfortable with making aggressive plays, not being too scared in LCS matches is a big hurdle when you bring on new players like that. That being said, the laning phase stuff, I would still expect Yasui to improve in a lot of these matchups. So they're not coming out from a deficit where Solo has to be the 50% of your team damage Gangplank.
I mean, that's a 1v9 game.
That's a 1v9 game.
It was literally 47.7 or 8, something like that. Like actually half of a whole team's damage. With Gangplank. So
and it was still a close game.
Yeah, so you don't want that to be the scenario, but I do think that getting a win like that versus Team Liquid, literally second place at MSI, back to back to back LCS champions. That is how you get your confidence for your new players. That should get them right, on track, I think. And so I'm excited for where Echo Fox is going to go.
Yeah, and I think if they keep going forward, the solo interview was we just needed to play loose again. People were nervous coming into day one of the season. We just need to play loose. And I think a good Echo Fox is one where they're going ham all the time. And it'll look, on their bad days, it'll look pretty bad. It'll look pretty stupid.
On Saturdays?
Of course.
And then on their good days, Sundays. Oh!
But I think that is what Echo Fox is, right? Like you heard Double F in his interview with Avali on Saturday, which is a great interview. He was talking about how he thinks teams need to play 60-40s. Like that is how you win League of Legends at a very high level when you have teams as good as you. A 60-40 is odds better than equal that you start winning this game. And if they're as good as you, that means you should take that risk every single time. And they're a 51-49 team. Like they're going to take those every time in their brain that there's a chance to win it because this is Rush, this is Solo, this is all these players. And they're going to be an aggro team if they're playing right. And as long as they're able to play aggressively, they're going to get some of this right. They're going to get some of this wrong, but they're going to be an exciting team to watch.
I wonder how much of that identity is going to stick with them with the new players though, because I do think partially that was also Phoenix to me. I think Phoenix was a big part of that risk-taking team where, I think back to his like super fed Corki games and he's just going to Valkyrie in on your carry in the middle of the team and try to one-shot him, he's going to make those crazy plays. And I don't really have, as much of a feeling of what kind of player Yasui is, off of these two games in the LCS. He lost both lanes. He played pretty defensively. The games weren't about him. So I don't know if they're going to have that same full-on aggressive feel or not, because, they have kind of lost what I believe to be one of the kind of spark plugs of the team. But, people have been saying, you've been saying, and a lot of people have been talking about how Yasui and Lost are both doing great in scrims and Echo Fox is popping off. So it'll be exciting to see if they can actually bring that onto the stage. But for me, like their results this weekend didn't really change anything as far as like how I felt. I was like, okay, well, you had a pretty rough game against Golden Guardians. You beat TL, but that kind of felt like TL through. Like you're definitely still in competition for playoffs, but I'm not like, well, damn, they're going to be up there with the best of them. So still need a lot more time, I think, to see where they land.
Yeah. Well, they face C9 and TSM this weekend. So good luck.
Yeah.
But hey, if you pull out one of those windows, not because one of these teams through, then I'm sold, right? Like then I'm sold on you being a really good team. I'm gonna keep looking forward to all your games.
Let's talk about TSM then, because they're another one of the 1-1 teams, and they did not come out as I expected. With they were grinding away, practicing up. I was like, I've got to be pissed after spring finals. And they've been tweeting out about they're gonna like take another look at their play styles and putting all this work in. Definitely came out with a very slow start. They did get the win versus CLG, but they have gotten wins versus CLG for 2.5, 3 years.
1,140 something days.
Yeah, I know. It's actually, it must be annoying for people to keep on like hearing this number over your head, but it's just such.
They haven't won a match since
it's such a statement.
15
right?
spring finals or whatever.
Anyways, though, I don't like TSM. We also talked about looking at what the games look like rather than the results, and it also was a bit shaky there in what it actually looked like in game.
Yeah. I was really disappointed actually with how TSM came out, because I was expecting them based on the fact that TL hadn't been practicing, based on the fact that TSM was grinding hard, that they seemed really hungry. I was expecting them to blast TL, honestly. Even the TL players talking to them before their match, it seemed like they're like, yeah, we're probably gonna lose. Like it didn't seem like they were expecting anything. And then it felt like same old TSM, back to kind of what they had done in the past, which got them a lot of criticism, which was, too much scaling, kind of like depending upon opponents' mistakes, that sort of thing is what that game felt like. They drafted Azir, they drafted Ezreal, they have these two lanes that aren't going to be able to be aggressive, aren't really going to do much until late game, and TL just kind of rolled over them. TSM never really got that chance. And I was disappointed because in spring I thought that they had really done a good job of actually picking up the pace of a lot of these games and starting to be one of these teams that was playing really aggressively. I felt that they were one of the teams that was best suited for this kind of MSI flex pick style. As far as coming back to NA, I'm like, Bjergsen and Broken Blade, they could play all this stuff. They could draft all kinds of double flex pick stuff and be roaming around the map and playing really aggressive. I could see that. So I was a bit disappointed to see them kind of go back to the Azir Ezreal, and that obviously didn't really work out for them at all against TL. The CLG win was important that they did get it, but it did feel...
it felt unimpressive to me.
Yeah, it was not an exciting win, and I mean partially that's because of the nature of the competition. They played the Sona Taric as well as Zillion Hecarim. That is going to be a do not much, and then you get strong, and then you group up, and it's like this 4-man core. Plus, I guess they had Jace, but it's mostly that 4-man core who is all speeding up and enabling and buffing up this Hecarim, who then kind of wins you the game, right? And that did happen, and they executed well on that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't super impressive getting to that point. Their bot lane got slammed in both their games this weekend. It just wasn't exciting. Like, it was a fine, okay, but I expected them to come out firing.
Yeah, I would say it was definitely good for TSM to have Grig in there for his first game and get that win.
Yeah.
And also, he's on this Hecarim plus a bunch of people that are going to speed you up, make you feel real strong.
Yeah, you're going to go hard. Yep.
They've talked about, they're working with Acadian and with Griggs still. So maybe they're splitting scrim time. Maybe they're doing whatever types of tryouts and type of stuff they want to try and figure out to see who the main roster is going to be.
Yeah.
But I did think that it was important for them to have Grig in there and get a win for his first one so he can have confidence and they can kind of build both junglers and see what works better.
Absolutely. And they get FlyQuest and Echo Fox this weekend, which to me, like, they should win both these. Like, if this was Spring Split, you should win these easily. If it's now, I'm like, you should still be better than these squads. You should win these games. Poor FlyQuest couldn't buy a win yet, so they're 0-2, maybe going to 0-3. Echo Fox, like, you should feel confident if you're TSM there because they only beat TL because they kind of threw. So TSM should feel confident. Like, they should go 2-0. They should be, feeling pretty good about this. And then, on to the next one. This is still, the spring finalists. We expect them to go to Worlds. Okay, you got to sort out which jungle you play, but I'm really hoping that week 2 just looks better game quality wise. I think it will be. I feel like these are just very good players. I was happy with Broken Blade the entire time. I thought he was very good in the TL match. I'm trying to remember actually, but I thought he was good overall, right? Because I'm hazy on the details right now, but I thought he was still very good. And waiting to see the rest of them. I guess what it comes down to.
Yeah, for sure. It's fair to have high expectations for TSM. Thus far haven't reached those, but I think they're going to get better as the season goes on. Kind of moving on to the next team, CLG here. What did you like for me? The big standout for CLG, the big positive was Ruin. I actually thought Ruin looked quite good this weekend as far as his individual play. He played very well against Someday. Yes, they lost to TSM, but I thought he was good as well against Broken Blade. And there was a lot of jungle attention up there to put Broken Blade behind that game. But I actually thought Ruin played well both games. The 100 Thieves win, again, that is the team that was at the bottom of the standings. And I believe that was actually the day 1 win, if I'm recalling.
Yeah, that was
they
amazing.
got Yumi.
Straight off.
That was
off
the
a plane.
Yumi game.
That was the Yumi game, and that was amazing straight out of customs.
Biofrost got to play Yumi.
Yeah.
I was super excited.
Yeah, and they slammed that game, but the TSM one, I know there was a lot of criticism about, okay, well, you don't have any way to engage, you don't have all these,
I mean, there was a lot of talk about draft on week 1 actually, and there was a big discrepancy, I think, in a couple of the games especially. For CLG, I do agree. I think Ruin was the best of the off-season changes. On week 1, he performed the best of all the. And you talked about, amazing as one of the off-season changes that came right out of customs, actually off of a flight. And it did look like that in the game. He had a very, very bad game.
Yeah,
he was a lot better the next day. Still lost, but yeah. So you talk about draft. I'm going to stay on the CLG point. I'm generally pretty happy with CLG. So I actually love that. Like, cool, we'll let you play Sona Taric. We're going to go play Varus Zyra. We talked to them on LCS Cooldown. They said, we never lost a scrim to Sona Taric with Zyra. And I was like, sick. That means you are like counter-stratting. Like, I'm always so excited for teams that are like, everyone wants to play this lane. We got a counter ready to go. And
CLG has always done that.
I know,
and it hasn't always worked out.
I love and respect CLG for that. That is a trait that I admire greatly. So I'm hot on CLG for that. They had some real dumb plays in the middle of the game, such as building 3 Leandri's Torments, and only 1 Merlinomicon against a double healer team.
We asked him about that too in cooldown, and he was like, I should have built it. It's just one of those things where they're used to their build paths that they
autopilot, man.
Exactly.
Yeah,
autopilot.
Yep.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, I don't fault them for the Zyra stuff. I thought that was really cool. I think that Zyra actually can slam a lot of these lanes. What was disappointing was they actually got way ahead in the 2v2. And then not only did they kind of mis-execute and die to some ganks that maybe they could have avoided, but they actually, like, that is more acceptable to be like, oh, okay, well, Hecarim came down and killed you. They actually died 2v2 to the Sonateric, who was way behind.
Yeah.
And that with this counter lane that you were already way ahead on. And it was like, well, what happened there? Like, summoners weren't being used.
Check the Pro View again.
Yeah.
There was
see Hecarim on Fog.
I mean, there was a lot of mistakes, right? The one where Smoothie kind of just beat down Biofrost. Like, he had his flash, he didn't flash the Dazzle, he just kind of sat there and died.
I remember watching that one, and it was very clear. Like, as soon as they were halfway in, that you can see the moment where they're like, "Never mind, just kill." Like, they commit to the call to kill.
Yeah,
and you're like,
you still have flash. You can just leave. Like, they almost got double killed.
Yeah.
Stixie had to like sidestep a stun, and he lived at least. But yeah, I mean, like, yes, there were some questions about the draft. I know Mark had talked a lot on the desk about, okay, well, you get ahead, but you have no way to really engage. So how do you actually force anything? You have Verisol and Zyra, I guess, Root, but those aren't really super consistent. So they just kind of like then, all right, 5-man in the bush over and over and tried to look for roots. It never really worked out, but even just down to how they executed on the plays, it was certainly disappointing to see them. Like, it was cool to see the counter matchup come out, but then to see them kind of fail to execute, what was a bit rough. But Ruin, I did think had a good game. Wiggly and Ruin were pairing up pretty well. They put Broken Blade very far behind. There were some good things happening for them.
Yeah, I thought Wiggly was really good.
Yep.
Especially in the first game, like,
with him.
Absolutely destroyed 100 Thieves and like snowballed off of amazing, not respecting where he was.
Yeah, and he's new to the league, right? Like, his first real split was Spring Split, so like he's 23 games into the LCS. That's pretty good for game 23, right? Like, I'm happy on Wiggly as well.
Yeah, no hesitation, I think, was the biggest thing in a lot of his big plays.
They play Optic TL.
Which of the teams at the bottom you guys looking to rise up?
I mean,
of the 0-2 teams, or of like the teams that didn't make playoffs last split, or like what's your what are we grabbing these teams from?
I mean, the last 2 teams we haven't covered are TL, but we've kind of covered them by talking about
I think we
other
got 100 Thieves and Clutch, right?
100 Thieves and Clutch, yeah.
So I think 100 Thieves is better than Clutch. I watched Clutch games this weekend, and my take is I think Cody Sun is good. I think Lyra is okay. I thought he was really bad before, but I think he's okay right now. His Lee Sin games were solid. I think Demonte has no idea how to team fight. I think Huni is just a top laner now. Like, he's like, forget his name is Huni. Forget all the things he did in his career.
We have to let go of all of the.
I am letting go of all the cachet Huni had in my mind.
That's bad.
So you've got like a good player in Cody Sun, a couple of decent players, and a couple of people who just, thankfully there aren't more imports. Like that's my very harsh, but that's my view of Clutch right now. Is like, I don't see how this team has the pieces to win a full game of League of Legends.
I mean, they're gonna win games of League of Legends.
Nope, 0-18, calling it right now. I'll wear a Cloud9 fuzzy hat if I'm wrong in the dot.
That's
Clutch cowboy hat.
Yep, I will happily wear a cowboy hat.
You want to take that bet
in their quarterfinal best of 5.
All right.
I'll 0-18.
Not just a hat, full cowboy outfit.
I will wear.
Full cowboy
I will
outfit?
be a full cowboy.
Okay.
On the
they
dive.
Get 1 win.
You know what? Sure. It means I'm wearing a cowboy outfit. Because I think they're probably gonna get like 2 and 16.
And you have to talk like a cowboy too.
Yeehaw!
I don't think I want
Clutch
that.
is great.
I want the full.
We got 2 steakhouses on our jersey.
Okay. All right. Well, you can look forward to freaking.
Let's go, Clutch! I want to see Cowboy Phreak.
Maybe we can get it in a week or 2. They pick up a win this weekend. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a harsh take, but I do agree that they didn't really give anything to be super excited about. 100 Thieves, I'm trying to reserve some judgment because I know that Amazing, just kind of got off the plane. He was stuck in customs, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, things had happened there. But I was disappointed with 100 Thieves again. The fact that they're again out to this start. I also just think that even though there are some justifications as far as why it looked that way, just like the mental game, they looked so defeated, down the stretch in spring, where it felt like they were giving up on games. It felt like they weren't even challenging at objectives. They're just like, yeah, well, you can have the inhibitor, sure, have the Baron too, that's fine. And I think that's why in my mind it was so important that they actually have a good start. So I think coming in this next weekend is critical that 100 Thieves pick up some wins, that they actually start having, some of those solid performances to build back some confidence, because I do think that 100 Thieves is feeling pretty beaten down. And, this is a team I still think that has the potential to rise up and become one of those playoff teams. So as far as someone who's at the bottom that can go up, I would say it could be them. But they need to get some wins quick, or I think this team is going to be mentally broken and they're going to be trashed the whole year.
I actually think they need to get rid of a lot of that pressure and start from the bottom, because usually when we talk about bottom teams,
it'll
be like, okay, they don't have a lot to lose, right?
Like, think about how we talked about Optic, who was like, okay, they were like a 7th, 8th place team, but it's like, yo, but you can do it. Like, Crown looks good, music looks good. We looked, 100 Thieves were like,
expectations are different though.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you should have those high expectations for them anymore. Like, they're actually a bad team.
But do you not think that they have those expectations for themselves? Because I'm not even talking about my expectations or fan expectations at this point. Do you think that honestly Bang and Someday and Aframu are coming into this league and saying, yeah, that'd be great if we got 8th? Because I don't believe for 1 second that those players
I don't think anybody
ever
says that.
Well, yeah, but there's some players that are expecting to kind of have those results. I don't think that these guys are those kind of players that are expecting that at all. I think Bang assumed he was going to come to North America and dominate. Aframu has done great in this league for a very long time. Someday has been one of the best players. So
how much proof do you need that that's not reality? A whole split?
I'm not even saying that it's not the case of where the team is, but I'm saying that your reactions and your feelings based on where you are completely dictated by what your expectations are.
Yeah.
If I go into a race and I think I'm the fastest person there and I get last,
and you're delusional.
then that
maybe
sucks.
so, but
yeah, but it still means that that's gonna hurt more, and maybe you're right, and maybe everyone's bad on their team, and Someday sucks, and Bang sucks, and
whoa, I didn't say that.
But you're saying essentially that they are that worst team, that like what the expectation should be. I don't think those players feel that. Maybe that will come if they finish this split 10th as well. Then I think there will be some huge changes and some big reevaluations. But I think for now, they don't see themselves that way, and I think the fans don't see themselves that way. So I still think expectations are so high and will remain high until they are beaten into the ground.
I feel like that's super detrimental to their mentality. And
I agree, but I think it's true.
It makes it more difficult to climb back up if you're going into it with that look. Like, if you're putting that pressure onto yourself, then they're going to continue to. It makes it so much easier to fall into that depression and into that, sad state, right?
Oh, we're just the worst team, whatever.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think you need to wipe away a lot of this extra weight that's being carried around so that you can try and build up and start over.
I think,
because I think they need to completely start over.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree as far as like, mental and like that is the more positive way to do it. And I think it actually would help them. I just putting myself in their shoes. I'm Bang. I've won the world championship a bunch of times. I'm Aframu. I'm MVP from like a year ago. I don't think that I could see myself being like okay with that, of resetting the expectations to as low as maybe they are.
Yeah, it's weird because I still can't realize that they're 10th. Like, it's just so strange. Like, yeah, I don't think Amazing's a big upgrade for Anda, but like this team can't get 10th again. 0-2. Okay, well, they'll win against Clutch, right? it's just strange. I just have a really hard time like actually fathoming that this is the reality we're in, where players this good are having these performances. And look, we'll see them again this weekend, right? They get to TL to open up, which is going to be rough, but like, I think Bang Aframu should be able to do just fine against Doublelift and Core JJ. So like, we'll get into that game and be like, all right, let's see this 2-on-2 play out. And if they play close, like, all right, it's what I expected. Cool, keep going.
Yeah, I just hope that when 100 Thieves start to get wins,
Yeah.
like if they get a win against one of the middle teams, I don't think people should be like brushing off and being like, oh well, finally, like you took care of business, like that was expected.
You beat Optic, whatever.
I think that should be an opportunity for them to celebrate, to try and build up and try and start that upward momentum, rather than anything less than defeating a bunch of the top teams isn't going to make people happy.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be happy if you're not allowing yourself to be happy unless you're a gold medal Olympic racer, Isaiah.
Unless you're Michael Phelps.
You're pretty fast. You're pretty fast, but a little bit off of the Olympic team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, though, 400 Thieves, regardless of where we see their expectations, regardless of where the players see their expectations, I think there has to be huge changes in their performance in summer, or the team is going to get blown up 100%.
Yeah.
There's going to be new coaches. There's going to be new things coming in. I would be shocked if it doesn't happen, because regardless of what we think, for sure, when they made this roster for spring, they were thinking this was worlds bound.
Yeah. Right? I know for sure the organization is putting so much work and money and effort into creating success, because that's what they want for their brand. So I'm 100% sure that they're very disappointed in that, right? But they're still, trying to make it work and still working forward. So yeah, I mean, if changes aren't there, then I expect them to come from the top down.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of The Dive. Thank you guys all for joining us. Remember to send in your questions. We didn't really have any questions this week, so hit us up. Oh, actually, I could check. Do you guys want questions?
I was going to say, right before we started the show, I was like, Dale, tweet out for some Twitter questions. We'll get some surprise Twitter questions that he hasn't had a chance to look at yet.
This is unvetted entirely. They're all in bad faith.
Just read the first one that you said.
First one.
Oof.
What should NA do as a region to improve overall gameplay is the first one.
2 imports per team. Going back to the very beginning one, you bring in better players.
Yikes.
I mean, that's okay. So that
yikes.
Okay, to be completely clear, that is part of it, actually. That's because of player base size. You actually do want to bring in players. That's actually very helpful.
I have a lot of questions now. There you go.
There you go. All right, sweet. Well, stop when you feel like you should stop. I mean, I don't know. There's no oh, Phreak figured out the grand plan how to get good at League of Legends. It's well, get good coaches, get good players, work on, improve, now you're good. It's a really dumb answer, but that's just how it works.
Phreak advice.
It's #Korean advice. Just get better and you'll be good.
Yeah. I mean, this question gets asked every year, right? We've been asked it so much.
What does beat IG?
And again, I know, right? So we had success last year's Worlds. We had pretty good success at MSI, but my answer is always start again at the beginning. We need to get more players interested in playing League, more players that are playing League into competitive League, and then foster more of the high school, college scene, get them building up, get them playing as a team and trying to coordinate, think about strategy towards the pro level. And it's all of these multiple steps that you have to go through from the very bottom to create more players, more interest, and more competition.
All right, I got a question I like here. This one's from Will at Will Such. It says, seeing the success of G2's role swap super team, are there any players you want to see swap roles or traded onto TL to make them even better? I think that's a fun question.
So the traded onto TL one, going into MSI, I was like, oh, you know what would be sick if we put Licorice and Bjergsen on Team Liquid and tried to create the NA super team. But that's just a trade. That's not role swaps. I think the role swapping is a more interesting.
I mean, your answer could be you don't think anyone's role swapping. That's the super team right there.
Yeah, but it's more funny if we get into the role swaps.
Yeah, I mean, basically what it comes down to is there a player who's just intrinsically as a League player better than the best player in another role?
What's the weakest role in NA?
Are you saying import or non-import? Because it's hard to find better than okay, maybe it's Xmithy, but I like him a lot, and Svenskern's quite good as well. But it's okay, well, Licorice. No, you're not. I don't think you roll swap Bjergsen. He's better than Licorice. You've already got Bjergsen and Jensen to backfill him in case that no one's gonna get better than Doublelift. No one's better than Core JJ. Okay,
jungle maybe.
Yeah, it's
who do you want to become a jungler?
We move Jensen over, because I don't want to lose Bjergsen or Licorice or anything, right? So it's I don't know. Maybe Bang is a sick jungler actually, right? And he's like actually the right choice for that team.
Yeah, I mean, it would be one of those things where like if Team Liquid are G2 and they sign Bjergsen, put him in mid lane, then they move Jensen to jungle. You're trying to think, like, it's a possibility.
You try Jensen
and they just add Licorice as the top laner.
Yeah. I think that'd be the move. Who knows?
All right, fair enough.
I'm trying to think if there's any player I'd like to see role swap. You know what? I would actually. So I don't know if this would actually make them better, but like because it's fun to see ADs or like who ADs I feel like always complain about their supports.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So it'll be fun to see some more ADs role swapping do support and seeing if they like are their ideal support or have more success there. Like, I think it would just be fun to see Doublelift as a support. I don't think that would make TL better because you probably won't find an AD better than him, and Core JJ is probably better than he would be if he went support. Yeah. But just the idea of that I think is fun.
I want to see Doublelift in mid so we can 1v1 Bjergsen. I think that's actually like, because that's the showdown, right? Is those two. So I actually want to see the Doublelift mid, so he can dodge perks some more, because he only got clapped last time. So, but he can fight Bjergsen and then he can fight Caps and then he can be the best mid laner in the world.
All right, last question here. This one's from Reeton at ReetonXD. I actually really like this question. What team would struggle the most when they lose their star player? So, Doublelift, Bjergsen, Licorice.
Optic without crown.
Optic without crown
is
my answer.
Done.
That's my answer.
Okay, I think you actually won.
Yeah, I think you won.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would even consider.
Golden Guards without Frog is also pretty doomed.
I think Haunter.
Haunter's good.
Is playing really well. Like I would actually say in spring, I think Haunter was more their star player than Froggen.
Okay, that's fair.
But I could definitely see either perspective.
You're right. Kobe still wins.
That one's really good. Place. I mean, I wonder what does TSM look like with Bjergsen, without Bjergsen. I think that it's also like the question becomes more complicated as you think like who is actually the backup, right? TSM without Bjergsen.
Yeah, a Blaze Olive is not Bjergsen.
Yeah, like that might be a really, really hurt team, but at the same time.
But then you look at Optic without crown.
Yeah.
In comparison to you're like,
they're so
never mind.
They're so dependent upon them, yeah.
Well, there you have it. Tune in on Saturday at 1:30 to see me, the winner of the game that we just played. Yeah, as well as these fine gentlemen and all of the LCS.
Yeah, and keep sending us your questions. Hashtag the dive LOL. We'll pull some more for next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.